As promised, we start the video with finally visiting Ezlan, the Undying King, who is the leader of the Basha priesthood and thus the spiritual leader of Rom. He is the Nui, prophet of Rom's guardian, who granted him his immortality. When the Root invaded, he fought it for 50 years, but there was no stopping it. Ultimately, Ezlan decided to burn away the Root using a doomsday device which devastated the entirety of Rom and destroyed almost all of its civilization. While he was successful in removing the Root, this also meant most of his surviving subjects now question his leadership, if they're not outright hostile. This is why the Buri tribesmen is working together with the Akari faction to destroy Ezlan. When you first meet the Undying King, he appears quite reasonable and offers you a deal to help him find the Guardian's heart, which he intends on using to restore Rom's guardian. In return, he will give you an item that allows you to travel between the realms, so you can continue your own quest. You will now have to make an important choice. Refuse his quest or accept it. If you choose not to accept his quest, he will first reprimand you for your arrogant foolishness and then ask you one more time. Deny him again and you will start a boss fight. If you then die and respawn, you will be able to speak to the king again, and the same dialogue options will be repeated, giving you another chance at accepting his quest. I guess Ezlan really wants the Guardian's heart, because no other boss in the entire multiverse of Remnant from the Ashes is as forgiving as he. If you choose to accept his quest, he opens up the portal behind him, allowing you to travel to Corsus. You can still choose to fight him at any point in time after accepting his quest by talking to him again and then saying you will not hand over the heart to him. However, since the portal is already open, I think there is little point in fighting him for now. You can always decide later if you want to keep the heart for yourself or give it to him. Corsus is a realm full of shallow swamps and plenty of bug-infused inhabitants. Its indigenous species have all been turned to Iskal, led by Cessnya, the Iskal Queen. She came to Corsus in the past, preaching about the harmony of the Iskal, and brought with her the Vixworm. The Vixworm is a type of parasite that burrows into the host's body and infuses a mixture of mammalian and insectoid genes, while simultaneously robbing them of almost all sense of individuality. Becoming part of the Iskal hive mind essentially turns them into mindless slaves, subservient to the Iskal Queen. An interesting side note is that in the Swamps of Corsus DLC, it was revealed that there actually exists one sole survivor of the original race, and she is known as the Graveyard Elf. The original population were otherwise mostly known simply as Swamp Elves. A new world means plenty of new challenges, and with a biome as moist as Corsus's, that equates to a plethora of different swamp creatures to fight. The first enemies I encountered were swamp hounds and zombies. Swamp hounds are four-legged creatures who have the ability to burrow underground, move straight towards the player and emerge with a vicious jump attack. It can be dodged with a well-timed sideways roll, but the timing is quite tight, so it's better to eliminate them before they get the chance to burrow. Aim for the front part of their head and you can take them down readily, thanks to the additional weak spot damage. Another tip is to utilize weapons with high alpha damage, which, coupled with the weak spot damage bonus, should be enough to stop them in their tracks and keep them stunned until you finish them off. The first elite enemy I discovered on Corsus was a Relentless. They have 4 arms and a red hood where their head would be. Like the Swamp Hounds and zombies, it is a strictly melee-oriented foe. The Relentless will charge at you at medium distance and perform a powerful uppercut or slam attack, which can be readily avoided with a sideways roll. An advice I would advocate for is to roll diagonally forward through the attack, so you get an extra moment to put some distance between the two of you. You can use this small time window to reload your weapons or to put some extra shots in your foe. If you're fighting in close range, a common attack is the double overhead spin attack, where the Relentless lunges slightly forward and swipes at you from the front with the right arms, rotates its body, and then follows up with a backhand swipe with its left arms. This attack is more challenging to dodge, especially if you get caught by the first hit, as it is very easy to mistime the follow-up attack. Your best bet is to stay on the very outside of this attack radius and dodge out of its reach. If you do get hit by the first attack, stay calm, hold your roll for just a split moment, and then dodge. If you're feeling extra gutsy, you can perform neutral dodges for either or both hits of this attack. However, that is slightly dangerous for obvious reasons. Once their health drops to critical levels, they go down kneeling and starts to regenerate health, and a small cloud of light appears right in front of their hood. During this time, all damage to the Relentless is negated. You must shoot the cloud to prevent them from recuperating, otherwise you will have to start the fight over with a freshly healed foe. If you deal enough damage to break the spell, the Relentless dies. Zombies, also referred to as swamp zombies and swamp zombie crawlers, are another abundant enemy type in Corsus. They are humanoid-shaped enemies, easily recognizable thanks to the yellow upper body. As the namings suggest, there are two types of zombies, the bipedal version and the crawling version. If you encounter the bipedal version, you can shoot its legs off, forcing it into the crawling version, or you can shoot its arms off, making it grow out tentacle-shaped arms. There are no special mechanics to fighting swamp zombies, but it seems to me that bringing weapons with a wider damage radius works well, as this makes it easier to break off their limbs and often stuns them. Apart from their regular melee attacks, which can be easily dodged, there is one attack in particular to beware of. Zombies have a grab attack, which will instantly kill you if you fail to resist. Essentially, if your armor and or health values are not high enough, or if you're not fast enough to complete the quick time event, you will instantly die. In particular, this may become annoying when fighting groups of enemies and you're focusing on something else, as this is the perfect moment for a crawler to come out from nowhere and snag you. I have met my untimely demise several times to zombies I assumed were dead after they fell down inside the roiling flames of my flamethrower mod or simply amidst a crowd of other enemies, but then killed me as soon as I turned my back to them. Even if they don't catch you with their grab attack, it can be just as deadly when they hit you with a regular melee attack. Therefore, I always try to be extra on guard whenever I fight these buggers. While passing through the overworld of the first area, I found one Simulacrum and also discovered the second portal into Corsus. This is where you would enter into Corsus from the Labyrinth if you used the Labyrinth key, which could be obtained early if you decide to fight the Undying King instead of helping him. On that note, I reckon Corsus is quite unique, in the sense that it is the only world featuring two entry portals, one from the Labyrinth and the second one from the Hall of the Undying. Overall, Corsus can be a really rough environment. You might pick a fight with a few swamp hounds, only to get swarmed by up to 10 enemies back to back to back, typically fighting a minimum of 2 to 4 of them simultaneously. You better pack a strong gun or a strong armor, or why not both, for otherwise you'll soon find yourself assimilated into the Iskal hive mind. The next elite enemy I faced was a Skull Mite. Appearance-wise, it looks like a regular swamp zombie, with a staff and a big grub on its head. It mainly attacks by firing corrosive orbs at you, which can be easily dodged. It also summons other zombies to aid in the fight. Once you reduce the Skull Mite's health to 0, the grub will detach itself from its host and slowly worm its way away from you and eventually find another zombie to parasite upon, returning to full power. That is, if you don't kill it first, of course. I find this elite enemy very simple to beat and expect you to have little trouble too. Destroy the zombie ads first, dodge the slow moving corrosion attack and aim for the grub. Once the host dies, put a few quick rounds into the grub and it will be obliterated into a green splatter.
It's over.
The first major item I picked up after the Simulacrum was the Blood Font Ring. It regenerates 0.334 health per second and also increases all healing effectiveness by 15%. It can be a good ring to put on if you're playing on some of the easier difficulties where you might take less damage. Coupled with other items like Ezlan's Band, Mender's Charm, the Twisted Set and a maxed out Triage trait, you could run around without ever needing to use a single Dragon Heart. However, in the Apocalypse difficulty setting, its effectiveness is quite limited due to the increased damage scaling. The next elite enemy I found was the Bloat. The Bloat is a big brute. I don't have much to say about this foe other than to share my usual combat tactic. I typically fight them by repeatedly taking a few shots, turning around and running away from it for a while, and then turning back and shooting it again. This works especially well if you can freeze it using weapons from the Subject 2923 DLC, however this is not necessary since they already run relatively slow. You should be able to outpace them with an upgraded swiftness trait and a lighter armour. Adding a damage over time effect as you're running away makes this foe crumble before it ever gets near you. When it comes to weak spot damage, I believe the weak spot is in the top left shoulder, so you can try aiming for that. I typically never bother with it myself, as I am usually too busy running away to aim properly. If you for unbeknownst reasons would opt for a close range engagement tactic, it has two main attacks. Both attacks begin with a small dash towards you, which will either be followed up by an uppercut or a ground slam. It is best to dodge away from these attacks. It also has a grab attack which functions just like most other grab attacks in the game. It will likely instantly kill you, so don't get grabbed. The next main event in the video is the first boss of Corsus.
It's over.
The Shack is home to the Unclean One, who is a required boss to beat to advance through Corsus. When you enter his building, he has his back turned to you, and his attention is fully focused on butchering some pieces of meat and bone at the deepest end of the upper floor. He won't react to you until you get quite close, and you can use this to your advantage in one of two ways, depending on which way you choose to fight him. If you choose to proceed with the normal kill method, you can use his obliviousness to start the fight to your advantage, for example, with your summons in place or by applying some damage over time on him, as he will take a few extra seconds from when you start damaging him until the real fight begins. Please note that this method may not be as viable during the initial encounter due to the short intro cutscene. However, you can still set up summons and mods prior to the cutscene. In all subsequent encounters, you can essentially decide yourself exactly when to start the fight by shooting him in the back once you're fully prepared. If you choose to proceed with the alternate kill method, you can instead sneak past him down to the right side of the upper floor and take the stairs down into the lower floor. Once downstairs, you can enter into one of the 3 urns, wait for the screen to fade to black, and then break out of the pot to start the fight. Fighting him upstairs grants you the Unclean Heart after completing the fight, which can be used to craft Devastator, which is a powerful crossbow that fires 5 bolts in one go in a small horizontal spread. It comes with the pre-attached weapon mod Skewer, which fires a large spike which deals both initial damage with an additional 300% stagger damage and applies the bleeding status effect over 20 seconds. This weapon is quite devastating, and I would rank it as a strong choice as a primary weapon, especially when coupled with additional items such as the Slayer set and Grim Coil Ring. The main drawbacks are its single fire and slow reload speed, however this can be mitigated with the fast hand straight or other items boosting reload speed depending on your playstyle of choice. Fighting him downstairs instead grants you the Hammerhead's Ore, which can be used to craft Butcher's Flail, which is a flail type melee weapon. Its special ability is Corrosive Strike, which applies the corroded effect, reducing enemy defenses by 5% per stack and lasting for 10 seconds. The Corrosive Strike can be stacked up to 5 times, and charged attacks apply 2 stacks per hit. This means that with a simple 3-hit combination of charged and normal hits, you can reduce an enemy's armor by 25%, which means you will deal 25% extra damage. Corroding your enemy's armor is one of the most straightforward ways in Remnant from the Ashes to boost your damage, as it disregards armor resistances, damage natures and other hidden traits and abilities. This flail can be a very effective tool in the hands of most skilled players, however I would not consider it the first choice for most people, especially with the flail moveset and wind-up timing mechanics. Let's just say it is an acquired taste. Once I learned about the alternate fight, I mostly go for this, because I think it's one of the better fights in the game. However, if you choose to go for the normal kill method, you should know the main fight patterns. In general, the boss moveset doesn't change too much. He can perform a weapon lunge attack, a belly lunge attack, a weapon throw, and a 3-hit combination attack. Other hazards on the upper floor are the breakable pots, which may contain swamp zombies. The good thing is that the boss's attacks may also damage the zombies. However, even if all the pots are broken, there will still be zombies spawned into the arena, dropping from the ceiling. The walls are also readily breakable, so don't try to take cover behind them. The Unclean One will simply bulldoze right through them or throw his hammer right into your face. Lastly, once he reaches below half health or so, he begins a crazy whirlwind attack, where he repeatedly revolves around his own axis while gathering momentum, smashing everything in his way. Lastly, once he reaches below half health or so, he begins a crazy whirlwind attack, where he repeatedly revolves around his own axis while gathering momentum, smashing everything in his way. This attack lasts quite long, and you simply must run away from it. The best strategy here is to pull him towards the edges of the arena as much as possible, so you can keep running away without the boss cutting you off diagonally and killing you. At the end of this attack he will throw his weapon at you, which you must dodge. While he is recovering from his dizziness, you have a golden opportunity to deal damage. For the lower floor, the fight plays out a bit differently. Apart from the weapon throw, weapon lunge, belly lunge, 3-hit combination and whirlwind attack, he also receives 2 additional moves, the back roll hammer smash and an oddly timed charged hammer ground smash attack, which also ends in the weapon throw attack. I would reckon these attacks were added to make the fight more challenging, since there are no adds helping the boss downstairs. The charged hammer ground smash attack is in my opinion the most challenging to dodge successfully. This is because of several things. The duration of each charge is randomized, as is the number of slams before the weapon is thrown. If you get 2 short charges back to back, you may not even be able to dodge them if you're wearing heavier armor, unless you learn to neutral dodge. Finally, the hammer throw attack itself has a different timing depending on your distance to the boss, making dodging it much harder. All in all, this attack in particular will require you to either don your strongest fully upgraded armor or to simply get good and learn some neutral dodges. This boss has only one weak spot, his butt cheeks. Aim for the fleshy parts on the sides of his underwear and you will deal extra damage. If you stay on a medium distance to the boss, you should be given plenty of chances to hit this target, for example when he's running to fetch his hammer after a throw, before he stands up after a belly lunge, or after he completes his whirlwind attack. Sometimes during the fight he gets winded by his physical efforts and hunches over on his knees to catch his breath, giving you another great chance at dealing massive damage. With the boss defeated, the Glutton trait is obtained, which increases the consumable usage speed by 1.75% per trait level up to a maximum of 35%. 2 interesting background facts about this fight are that when the game launched back in 2019, the alternative kill method was not available, and the boss used to have another weak spot on his head. The lower floor fight was introduced with the Swamps of Corsus DLC in April 2020. The next area was the Mist Fen. This part of the swamps features a bit more advanced architecture, with plenty of buildings raised up above ground level, bridged by wooden walkways. This is the home of infected swamp elves, fallen swamp elves, or Quill Witches, with the occasional sprinkle of other elite enemies such as the Headless or Bloats. The infected swamp elves are easily recognizable due to their blue-colored skin. They are a common enemy which are easily staggered by shots to the head. They often walk in a straight line towards the player and sometimes dodge if they notice you are aiming at them. They also have a ranged attack where they throw their weapon towards you. This attack is easily predicted by the loud noise they make and can often be simply sidestepped to avoid damage. While the individual infected swamp elf might be readily taken down, their strength lies in overwhelming you with numbers, similar to the swamp zombies in the previous area. The fallen swamp elf is one of my most disliked enemies on Corsus. They have the same movement pattern as the infected elves, but the main difference is that once their health is depleted, they fall to the ground and a second later, a zombie spawns from their body. This is the reason I dislike them, because they are not fun nor rewarding to battle. You pop them a few times and they go down, but then you just stand there and wait a while and have to fight the zombie afterwards that doesn't have any weak spots, so it's just an extra bullet sponge with no real added difficulty. And the short pause in the fighting right before the zombie spawns ruins for me the flow of most fights and just feels unnecessary. The Quill Witch, although a quite common sight around these parts, is an elite enemy. They are easily recognizable due to their insect-like appearance. They are often found standing around in a sort of resting state and will not notice you unless you approach them from the front. Again, the head is their weak spot, and with a powerful enough weapon you may even knock them down. This enemy typically is not one to immediately come charging at you, so you will mostly see its corrosive spit attack, which you can dodge by moving or rolling to the side. In fact, sometimes the Quill Witch will actually distance themselves from you with a backwards leap. Stay at the medium range and aim for their head, and they should not pose any major danger to you. A much rarer enemy is the Headless. They are often heard shouting "For the Queen!" as they are running about trying to get to you. They have a lantern where their head should be, and a huge hammer is their weapon of choice. At longer ranges they will sometimes throw their hammer towards you and either charge straight for you or go to retrieve the hammer. When they don't have their hammer, they can perform a strong uppercut attack. Otherwise, they would typically perform an overhead hammer front slam attack. Their weak spot is located on their back, where the small sack is. It has quite a small hitbox, but is definitely worth going for if you can hit it. The best opportunity to do so is when the Headless is going to retrieve their hammer, as you can easily get behind them during this animation. The next major item I found was a necklace. The Rock of Anguish is an amulet that grants the player an additional 10% movement speed and 15% reload speed for every 25% of max health missing. I don't have much else to say about it other than that it's a fun item to put on just to try and see how fast you can run and reload when you are at critical health. If you want to increase your movement and reload speeds in a safer way, you can just level up your swiftness and fast hands rate over time. Shortly after finding this item, it was time to meet Cessnya, the Iskal Queen. She appears gentle enough and well relaxed in her throne at the heart of the Mist Fen. And just like Ezlan, she also wants your help to get the Guardian's heart. Again, you have to make a choice whether you would like to help her or Ezlan. But no matter which choice you make, I would recommend accepting her quest for now, as this unlocks her shop. This allows you to purchase Greenleaf, which helps against the corroded status effect. You can also purchase the Scythe melee weapon, Blood Vials and Divine Nectar, which increases your armor effectiveness by 10% for 60 minutes. After purchasing one Greenleaf, I ventured into the next settlement, cleared it out, and then continued into the next dungeon.
Iskal is lush and wealthy. We adore. We are... We will be watching.
The Needle Lair is a dungeon leading to the Throne of Barbs and the Barbed Terror boss fight. This is a side dungeon that was added together with the Swamps of Corsus DLC. Inside there were several new enemies to face, including the common Shell Fiends and Barb Stalkers, and the somewhat rarer Toxic Maidens, which share many similarities to the Quill Witch, both in appearance and moveset. Rarer enemies include the Flickering Horror and Temple Guardian. Essentially, it's the standard enemy layout in every new world, zone and dungeon, where in this case Shell Fiends and Barb Stalkers are the fodder, mixed up with a regularly reoccurring stronger enemy in the form of the Toxic Maidens, and then on certain points in the dungeon, typically around the halfway mark or near the end, you get to face the much rarer and more challenging elite enemies like the Flickering Horror. Shell Fiends are easily identifiable through their thin frame and yellow center. They can be easily picked off with a couple of shots to the head. Barb Stalkers are a bit sturdier, but still go down readily with a few well-placed headshots. The main difference, except for physical appearances, is that the Barb Stalkers also have a ranged attack where they shoot a spike at you. Toxic Maidens can be found in two versions, standing or hanging. The only difference is if they are on the ground or hanging from the ceiling, like a bat. You need to keep your wits about you and be on the lookout whenever you hear some clicking noises. If they spot you, they will let out a mighty screech which will stun you momentarily and also summon Shell Fiends. Their head is a weak spot, so the best option is to quickly pop them before they have a chance to scream. Similar to the Quill Witch, the Toxic Maidens can also fire corrosive spit at you, but one main difference is that they are more likely to fly right at you for a swooping claw attack. In close range, they can perform a deadly triple swipe attack that is likely to cause some serious damage unless you manage to dodge it. The Flickering Horror is one of the few enemies that actually owes up to its name. Every time I hear that weird warping sound, I get worried that my last moments are soon to pass. There is just something scary about them, the way they move about the dungeon in their mostly incorporeal form, with only a slight purple mist to tell of their passing. I have much respect for this foe and would personally consider them at the very top of the dangerous enemies tier list. They typically start the fight with a charge heralded by that loud warping sound. If you fail to dodge this, you are likely to just die instantaneously. Succeed in dodging it and you got yourself a tough fight. If you are fighting at a close range, it might do a 2-hit swipe combination, or rarely a grab attack. If you are at a slightly farther distance, it might instead opt for another charge, which is indicated once again by the sound cue, as well as its flickering appearance. Sometimes, in the middle of the fight, they might go invisible and roam around in their dimensional rift form. If that happens, you must shoot the purple lights where its head would be to force it to reappear again. Their weak spot is the light in the center of their head, so aim for that whenever possible. On my first run-through of this dungeon, I did end up dying to one of these monsters in a way that could be described as slightly unfair, so I am happy that it didn't happen during a hardcore playthrough. So, with that highly disappointing ending to my first run through this dungeon, we can skip the rerun and head right to the next point of interest.
This isn't looking good. Damn it!
In these types of dungeons there are breakable walls, which may contain loot. Typically some upgrading materials, consumables or a chest. Sometimes they also contain nothing at all, and very rarely you may get lucky and find a major item behind one. So it is always worth opening them to see what is inside. In this case I found the Devouring Loop, which is a ring which grants critical hits a 5% chance to deal 4 times as much damage. When the game launched, it used to be 6%, and it was also possible to bump this value up to above 20% with the Catalyst trait. However, like many other items during the nerf apocalypse in 2020, it was essentially rebalanced in a way that made it less useful and less fun. In its current state, it is too unreliable to be taking up a permanent position in one of your only 2 ring slots. However, for certain builds focusing on single-hit big damage numbers, it can be an option for specific purposes, like retrying a specific boss fight on easier difficulties and with a fully maxed out build, only to get that overkill critical hit to end the fight in just a few seconds. Still, you'd have to have a lot of retries to make it work, considering the 5% chance only applies to critical hits in the first place. So assuming you had a 100% critical hit chance, meaning every shot fired would result in a critical hit, it would still require an average of 20 shots to procure 1 Devouring Loop overkill hit. Thus, this ring would perhaps be better suited for weapons with high capacity magazines, such as the Assault Rifle, Chicago Typewriter or Beam Rifle, where each individual devouring crit hit may not have as much of an impact due to the lower damage numbers, but it might be compensated by the increased number of chances to proc it between reloads. Overall, this ring is easily outperformed by plenty of others like Heartseeker, Hunter's Band or Ring of Supremacy. I mean, even the flat out 12% bonus damage given by the Stone of Balance might dish out more overall DPS than the Devouring Loop. So the main takeaway is that this item was made for people who just want to see big numbers. The big enemy you saw me take out earlier was another elite enemy. Similar in stature and moveset to the Bloat, the Temple Guardian has a very small weak spot just above its mouth where its brain is exposed. But since this can be challenging to hit, I typically just fire towards its center frame, below the head. It is also quite slow moving even when running, so with a light armor and upgraded swiftness trait you can readily outpace it. Then the strategy becomes simple, just like for the Bloat. Take some shots, preferably put some dots on it, run away while reloading, turn around and take some shots, rinse repeat until dead. If this is not an option for you, you should be aware of its belly flop dash attack, which will cause you to stagger. Other moves include a slam attack or uppercut, which can be used in combination with a dash. If you spot a Temple Guardian early on, you should be able to take it down before it gets too close to you, since they tend to stagger momentarily once they reach approximately half health. I would say these are mostly a challenge if you get caught in a very cramped space or have enemies blocking your retreat. With the Temple Guardian defeated, it was time to enter the Throne of Barbs to fight the boss of this dungeon. Barbed Terror's appearance is very reminiscent of the Barb Stalker mobs, albeit with a larger frame and a paler complexion. It is not a boss I have fought too many times, but enough to know that it's quite a hectic fight with lots of movement and things happening simultaneously. Since the boss's head is a gigantic weak spot, and it is always stationary in the middle of the arena, and on top of this there are also no adds in this fight, the difficulty lies instead in surviving the various combinations of claw swipes and spike attacks. Breaking down the claw attacks, there are three types. For the vertical slice there is a sound similar to pulling out a sharp object from a sheath. If you hear this sound, you need to wait until just before the claw comes down, then dodge to either side. For the side swipe there is usually a loud sound right before, so you know what is coming. You can dodge in any direction, but dodging to the right or backwards can be preferred, as you are rolling away from the attack radius. If you stand right in front of the boss, it might do a quick swipe in the opposite direction. For this attack you should dodge backwards. This only happens when you are very close to the boss, so you can avoid this by staying further away. I should mention also that if you know the timings well enough, you could perform neutral dodges for each of these three attacks. However, this is of course more challenging and more risky due to less invincibility frames. So we now know how to deal with the claw swipe attacks, but the real challenge actually lies in managing the spike attacks. The spike attacks are quite complex, and they originate from three main areas in the room: left, right and center. All spikes can be fired in a progression from left to right, back to front or vice versa. They can also be fired off in quicker bursts from smaller segments of the walls. Some unfortunate combinations can be quite challenging to face, like a slow spike swipe from left to right that is still ongoing while a short burst of quills appear from your right side and the boss is performing a claw attack simultaneously. Essentially, the quills can easily box you into a corner if you don't time the dodges well, serving you up on a silver platter for the boss to finish you off. My method of overcoming the challenging quills is to stay on the sides of the arena as much as possible and roll through the spikes into the corner. The idea is that in the corners there are fewer spikes that can reach you, allowing you to quickly get back to dealing damage to the boss after a successful dodge. This does however push the camera up right behind you, so if you're not used to that you may want to avoid this. Listening to the sound cues for the quills and claw attacks is critical to survive this fight, and there are some telling visual signs as well. Whenever the boss lets out a high-pitched scream or raises his arm, there will be quills incoming. Your position in the arena also influences what type of spike patterns you get, since it will only fire spikes that have the possibility to hit you. As an example, staying in the right corner of the arena means that the top left spikes will never spawn, since their reach only extends from the left corner of the arena to slightly past the center. If you're struggling with this fight, I can recommend using the Veil of the Black Tear weapon mod, as this negates all damage you would normally take from the quills, eliminating most of the challenge from this fight. Another tip I can give is that Barbed Terror is weak to both fire and radiation based damage. 10% weak to fire and 15% to radiation. Thus, the beam rifle and hotshot mod combination is one of the best choices for this particular fight. There is no alternative method of beating the Barbed Terror. After completing the fight, you are rewarded with Barbed Sinew, which can be used to craft the Unstable Quills weapon mod. Unstable Quills allows you to fire 12 quills into your enemy, which deal a small amount of corrosive damage as they are embedded. The quills can then be detonated by activating the mod again, dealing additional explosion damage within 2.5 meters. You can also overcharge the quills if you deal damage to your targets after hitting them with the mod, which doubles the total amount of damage from the subsequent explosion. Overcharging is indicated by glowing quills and works best with higher damage weaponry. I've never used the mod much myself, but I have come to understand it to be an interesting case of love or hate amongst the community, where some people love it and others hate it and thinks it's a waste of time. Theoretically speaking, I would lean more into the camp that it's not a waste of time if you pair it with the right traits and equipment, such as for example the Demolitionist and Wisdom traits and the Vulcan's Detonator. After escaping the dungeon, I went to open the shortcut back to the Iskal Queen's throne, and then headed back toward 13 to resupply on consumables, upgrade my Defiler to +3, and craft the Butcher's Flail.
Falcon, here you go. Keep your head up. Hold there.
How's it going? Later.
Greetings, friend. Here you go. Safest of travels. Falcon, let's see. Safest of travels.
I'm not in the mood for chat.
Ah, good. Certainly. Be safe out there.
Yeah? All right then. We're done here? Yeah? Fine. Let's Let's have a look. I've got work to do. Looking good. Bag's full. That's it.
It should be mentioned that throughout the entirety of Corsus I was playing with a gear score below the average of the enemies I was facing. In general, the gear score requirements for each world can be extracted from entering new areas and checking your rating versus the zone, and from facing world bosses. From this you get an approximate gear score of 79 for Corsus, with the world boss requiring a minimum of gear score 10. The world bosses are always going to be one level higher compared to your current gear score when entering their arena for the first time. Playing underleveled typically does not pose any greater hindrances if you are a veteran player, as you can compensate for the lack of damage to a large extent with a couple of extra ammo boxes, more efficient character builds, and your general game knowledge. However, some world bosses become nearly unbeatable without upgrading your gear, as they are set at predefined minimum values. Both Corsus's world boss and the base game's final boss are two great examples of pretty hard damage checks, as you will not survive these encounters without an appropriate damage output. With that said, running through Corsus with most of my gear at level 5 to 7, with the Spitfire sidearm sticking out at +4, equivalent to +8 for a non-boss weapon, this put me at a severe disadvantage. And there are actually two reasons why I often follow this strategy. For one, I prefer the added challenge of actually having to fight my enemies, even the common mobs. Of course, it can be nice to sometimes feel like an overpowered badass, but I personally find it more rewarding coming out on top of an engagement where skill is what saved me, as opposed to the strengths of my weapons and armor. It's just how I like to play games most of the time. The second reason why I did not upgrade my gear was partly to save upgrading materials for when I find new weapons and armor, but more importantly, to set me up for a smoother world boss fight. When I was heading to Xillis, I knew it would be at a minimum level 10. And since my average gear score was somewhere around level 6 to 7, it ensured me that I would not be higher leveled than the boss. This in turn allows me to enter the boss arena, give it a good shot, most likely die, respawn, go to the ward and upgrade my weapons, and then come back to the fight with weapons now matching or even surpassing the boss's level. Xillis was a perfect example of that. I first entered its arena with my repeater pistol at level 6 and hunting rifle at level 7. And although I was able to successfully dodge most of the attacks and keep a consistent damage up during the first part of the fight, my overall DPS was simply too low to stun both Xillis out of the scream attack, which then instantly killed me. That is why I call this boss a damage check. You could of course build your character in such a way that you may be able to survive the scream attack even at lower gear score levels, but the main point still stands. No matter how skilled you are, there is a minimum gear score for this fight. And with that premise in mind, the easiest way to circumvent it is to knowingly be on the lower end of that requirement, and then surpass it through subsequent upgrades to your weapons and/or armor. So what I did was that as soon as I died, I upgraded my repeater pistol, hunting rifle and all pieces of the hunter set to level 11 to match the boss's gear score. Then I went back and beat it within a couple of extra tries. If you want a detailed guide on how to beat Xillis, you might want to check out a previous video I made some years ago. I will leave a link to it in the description. The only extra piece of information I would like to add is that you can break the second cocoon early by shooting it, which spawns the second Xillis at 75% health. Another small tip, if you're not playing on hardcore, is that the fastest way to exit the dungeon is to simply roll off the bridge and respawn.
traveler. Till next time.
Hello again. Only the... Safest of travels.
What? Fine, let's have a look. We're done here. Keep moving.
Oh, traveler. Ah. Take care, my friend.
Defeating both Xillises at the same time grants you the Guardian Tentacle, which can be used to craft the Guardian Axe. The Guardian Axe's Spirit Engine ability generates twice the amount of mod power compared to the damage dealt. If you defeat the second Xillis after it has become enraged, you will obtain the Hive Stone instead, which can be used to craft the Hive Cannon handgun. Hive Cannon is a corrosive type weapon that comes with the pre-attached Hive Shot weapon mod, which fires a hive projectile dealing 20 damage upon impact within 2.5 meters and generates a small area of insects on the ground which damages everything moving through it and also applies corrosion stacks. The primary fire also has a 2-meter blast radius and can stagger most enemies. In hindsight, I would definitely have gone for the Hive Stone instead of the Guardian's Tentacle, but I kind of forgot about it since I hadn't played the game for a while. In the end, I reverted back to the same strategy as the last time I beat it, which was to keep both health bars similar until the end, and as such I finished the fight obtaining the tentacle instead. Defeating Xillis also grants you the Executioner trait, which increases your critical hit chance by 1.25% per rank, up to a maximum of plus 25%. This is arguably the most important trait to upgrade, as this will directly affect your overall damage output. As mentioned in one of the first videos in this series, maximizing this trait coupled with a maxed out Kingslayer and Exploiter trait increases your critical hit damage to 385%, without even factoring in other items such as rings, amulets, armors and weapon mod combinations. After the world boss fight, I went to Cessnya and opted for giving her the heart. This is mainly because doing so rewards you with the Slayer set and crossbow. On top of this, 1, 2 and 3 pieces add a 7.5, 15 and 30% damage bonus respectively to the next shot with the same weapon within 10 seconds after a reload. It is a medium weight armor set that works best with single shot weapons such as, for example, the hunting pistol or crossbow. The crossbow is a silent single fire long gun with a high damage output. Dialing in at a 20% base critical hit chance, 110% weak spot damage bonus and 115 base damage, it is a perfect fit with the Slayer set. I have spent many hours running around with the crossbow and Slayer set combination in the past, and I consider it to be a very strong combination. Before leaving the Queen, I also purchased the Scythe and 1 Divine Nectar, before venturing back to Rom to pay Ezlan a final visit. I don't feel great about fighting Ezlan. After all, he was just trying to save his realm in the manner he thought best, and proved to be quite a helpful fellow opening the gate to Corsus for us. However, he must perish for us to obtain the Kingslayer trait. Enter the royal chamber and speak to Ezlan. Refuse his quest twice and he will have no choice but to fight you, calling his Vir to attention, exclaiming that "There is an intruder in our midst." As soon as he finishes this line, the engagement begins and the 4 anointed behind the Undying King come alive. I would recommend approaching the fight from either side, so you can use the wall of the elevated platform and the pillars for cover during the initial stages of the fight. Focus on taking out the anointed quickly with accurate headshots and then switch target to the king himself, aiming for the head. After dealing with the first 4 anointed, the king may summon more, which will then spawn from the sarcophagi lining both long edges of the room. Take these out as soon as you can and be wary of their long-range attacks, which can severely damage you. If you are in a good position, you can take them out before they even complete their spawning animation. Apart from this, Ezlan can also summon 2 flying stationary orbs, which will fire projectiles at you whenever you are in their line of sight. Their attack is very similar to the staff attack from the Anointed, and also deals high damage. Again, take these out as fast as you can, because they can become quite the headache to dodge in combination with the Anointed. Plus, the Undying King can summon orbs multiple times, and you really don't want to have to think about dodging more than a couple of these at the time. There is also a third attack that you may not see too often, where he raises his arms to summon a ball of energy above his head, which he then launches at you. It is good to know that during this initial part of the boss encounter, apart from the spirit bomb attack, Ezlan is very passive, almost as if he don't want to raise his hands against you despite your transgressions. Even after you start shooting him, all he will do is continue to summon adds and evade your attacks. Depending on how fast you deplete his health bar, you may skip the middle phase and go straight to the ending phase of the fight. The middle phase is the part where the Undying King finally decides he has had enough of your foolishness and materializes his melee weapons to take you on following a more hands-on methodology. In this stage there are mainly 3 attacks he can do: a single hit strong attack, a leap attack, or a devastating 3-hit combination. The single hit attack can be easily dodged, just by baiting the attack and then running quickly away from it, or by dodging away from the attack. The leap attack instead warrants a delayed roll in response to successfully dodge it, and the timing to get it can be quite tricky. I am willing to bet most people who fought Ezlan got hit by this attack during their first experience, since you've been trained for most of the game at this point to instantly dodge most leap attacks. For the triple hit attack, it's easiest evaded by baiting the attack and then running as far back as possible before you dodge backwards and then keep running away from it. This should get you out of its reach if done correctly. A good advice for this phase is to run away and keep your distance from the king, since he moves quite slowly. This allows you to readily deal enough damage to push the fight into the next phase without having to ever deal with his melee attacks. Once he reaches around half health, the third phase begins, and he will summon multiple lurkers dropping in from the walls and rapidly converging on your position, while the king himself retreats back onto the altar to heal. Lurkers will come from all sides, so a good strategy is to run with the king back to the altar, funneling all of them onto the stairwell in front of you. This makes it much easier to manage the lurkers, which can easily overwhelm you otherwise, and being near the altar puts you in a perfect position to deal massive damage to the boss. So after dealing with the lurkers, you have a good opportunity to heal up or use an item like Frenzy Dust to boost your damage before returning to lay waste to the Undying King. Dealing enough damage stuns him out of his regenerative spell, and the phases repeat. After depleting the king's health bar, he falls down for a few seconds before he is revived with less than half health. Upon resurrecting himself, he goes for the altar to regenerate HP, and phase 3 plays out once more. Make your way to the altar a second time, kill all the lurkers, shoot Ezlan in the head a few more times, and that should be it. As he falls and the clattering sounds of his crescent-shaped swords fades away, you are rewarded with the Labyrinth key, Undying Heart, and the Kingslayer trait. The Labyrinth key is used to activate the portals inside the Labyrinth and is a critical item required to continue the story. As mentioned before, this means that killing Ezlan during your first encounter with him allows you to skip Corsus entirely, since you can use the Labyrinth key to head to the fourth and final world immediately, leaving the fate of Corsus to run its own course. The Undying Heart is used to craft Ruin, which is a radiation-based rifle that fires accurate 3-round bursts and comes equipped with a 3x magnification scope. Its weapon mod is called Undying, and it allows you to revive yourself with 50% health if your health drops to 0. Upon reviving, you will also take 10% less damage and be immune to status effects for 5 seconds. It is a very strong weapon due to its elemental damage, accurate fire and trait, and at some point in the game's history I remember most people were using this for their hardcore playthroughs. To summarize, it is a great weapon if you want to keep on pushing forward, without worrying about potential deaths resetting all your progress. Just get back on your feet, pop a Dragon Heart and continue on your merry way. A lesser known fact is that the developers added a hidden mechanic coupled with the Undying weapon mod back when they launched the Subject 2923 DLC. This means that if you put Ezlan's band into one of your ring slots, it will significantly shorten the cooldown of the Undying mod, from 5 to 2 minutes. Finally, we have the Kingslayer trait, which grants the player plus 1.25% critical hit damage per trait rank, up to a maximum of plus 25%. Not much more needs to be said other than that this is one of the strongest traits in the game, as this allows you to deal a flat out 25% more damage with every critical hit once it is upgraded to max. Before heading into the final world, I went back to the ward and resupplied some consumables. Crafting Ruin also unlocked the handling trait, which is obtained after acquiring 10 ranged weapons. The handling trait reduces weapon spread and recoil by 1% per rank up to a maximum 20% reduction. Equipped with the crossbow, defiler and slayer set, I embarked upon the journey to the final world. Next time we'll step into the vibrant world of Yeisha to traverse the deepest part of the jungle to try and find Commander Ford. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like and consider subscribing to my channel. Comment below if you have any questions or anything else you would like to share. Until next time, let me wish you a good rest of your day.